Welcome to Perspectives El Paso. I'm Professor Leon Blevins of El Paso Community College Television. The date on this taping is the middle of February of 2018. A little over a year ago probably, I was at some event and people sitting at their different tables handing out their business cards and pamphlets and things of that nature. And a woman named Eileen Grozier handed me her business card. And it said Vet Center. And so I put it in my files, and as I was getting ready to do some taping for this semester, I contacted her and said, I would like to talk to you about the Vet Center. I've done many programs about Vietnam Veterans of America and about the Veterans of Foreign Wars and others. But let's talk about the Vet Center. Could you be on the show? So we lined her up, and here she is today. Eileen, good to see you again.
Good afternoon, Professor Blevins.
I've seen you as a part of the color guard with Vietnam Veterans of America. Isn't that a great feeling when you're in that?
Yes, sir. I served from 1970 to 1977 in the Air Force as a medic. And after being a medic for just a few months, they needed people in the mental health field. So they crossed me over and I started working in the mental health field. So that was in probably 1971.
Oh my goodness.
And then after I got out of the military, I used my military benefits to get my degree and become a social worker.
Good for you. And then you brought with you today Jackie Diego, right?
Yes.
Correct.
And what is your position with the Vet Center?
I'm also an adjustment counselor, but right now I'm interim director.
Interim director for it, okay. Well, we're glad to have you here also. We're going to find a little bit about it. Where are you from?
I was born in El Paso. I grew up in this area.
Okay.
I went to high school at Gaston High, went to an MSU where I got my bachelor's and my master's.
Okay, great. Are you from El Paso?
I was born and raised right here.
Well, we have two natives right
Yes.
here on the stage
Yes,
with
sir.
us today.
Yes,
So you know kind of what's going on in El Paso, but you know something of a bigger field of what's going on national issues and veterans issues. What do you think is the biggest veterans issue today?
Today, all our returning veterans coming back have the readjustment issues, and they show up at our vet center. And so we help them and their families. So we do a lot of individual counseling, we do group counseling, we also do family counseling.
How do you relate to the Department of Defense and Veterans Administration?
No, the Department of Defense does refer soldiers to us, and the soldiers like to come to the vet center because then they don't have to deal with their command about any mental health issues.
Oh, okay.
So that's fairly new. We started doing that just a few years ago. Prior to that, it was only military veterans after they got out of the military.
And that's one of the fears they have if they reveal they have a mental issue.
Yes, sir.
Now, we have a relative in our family who is bipolar, and he put himself into a facility for diagnosis, and that's what they told him that he had. And so sometimes people are a little afraid to be listed as having a mental problem.
Definitely.
Because they're afraid it would affect their advancement in the military or benefits that they might receive. Do you run into that?
We do. Different situations come about, and a lot of it has to do with applying for jobs and whether or not to disclose their mental illnesses. Many vets fear it might affect their opportunity to get a job.
But you work with each one of these individually. It's not just a group therapy session, it's individually.
We have both.
Oh, you have both. You have group sessions. What size groups do you try to work with to get them to interact with each other with their mental issues?
Right now, we have groups every single day, and we have a group that's Vietnam veterans working on PTSD issues. So, you know, even though it's been, you know, many years since Vietnam, they still have some of the anxieties, some depression. Now as they're getting older, some medical issues they're going through.
When the Vietnam Memorial Wall replica came through El Paso, I think it was 2002, and my wife Shannon and I went out there. I was dressed as Uncle Sam and visited with many other people. Many had been in my classes in the early 1970s when the war was ending. Many of my students were just back from the Vietnam War.
Wow.
One of them that was there, that one of the 2 days that I was out there, he said, "Could I come and visit with you in your home?" He had been in my class when he came back from the war. I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'd like to spend more time than we have standing out here in front of the wall."
Oh, wow.
And so I said, "Okay, let's put it on the calendar." And the next week he came and he spent about over 3 hours visiting with me.
Wow.
And it was like a therapy session. He said, "Blevins, I'm telling you things I couldn't talk about with other people." And that what you find, some of them open up to you, they could not open up to their loved ones?
Yes, yeah, they, because of all the horrific things they face in war, and they don't want to tell their family members about that for fear of how they will be seen, the stigma of mental health also. So they feel very comfortable at the Vet Center, both as individuals, as couples, or in group, because they share that bond of combat.
Now, you remember 2016, I think it was August 2016, that we had a Welcome Back Vietnam Veterans.
Yes.
Emma Costa on city council at that time, and one of her friends, Patty, helped put that together, and Emma's husband was a Vietnam veteran.
Yes.
And you were at those events, the parade and the Coliseum. And that was good too, because these people felt they had been slighted. They came back from Vietnam, some of them were spat upon, made fun of, called baby killers. And they never had a parade.
Right.
And so I appreciated Emma putting that together, on a parade for them, and you were there. How did that make you feel?
Oh, it's always pride, very, very proudful of my service and my fellow veterans as well. There's no greater honor. And because this past year the theme was honoring women veterans, I led our honor guard and called cadence for the whole 1.5 miles that we marched.
Oh. Now there's a Women Veterans Memorial out at the Memorial Center with a big flag at Trans Mountain Campus. And I was there on the day that that memorial was dedicated, and it was quite thrilling to see a lot of nurses. Most of them were nurses, but not all exclusively had been in the nursing corps, being honored, and it made them feel so good that finally someone was saying, Jimmy Melver, who led in a lot of that. By the way, our secretary for this particular operation, Carolina Paris, her husband was a Vietnam vet. You met her just a few minutes ago. And so there's a sharing, a bond there that people do care, even all these years later.
Yes.
How do you find? Do you find some people, they've gone so deeply into depression, it's hard for it to get them back, or they don't want to talk about some of these things, and you draw them out?
One of the reasons they don't want to talk about their combat experiences is because they become emotional. And so that's one of the reasons it's hard for them to talk to close family members, close friends, because they don't want to have that emotional outburst in front of them. Many times family mean well, they try to be supportive, but sometimes they might make comments that might make him feel bad. For example, one of the things they tell us they hear a lot is, it's already been 50 years, get over it.
Right.
Like that's the worst thing you can tell to a Vietnam veteran, to get over it, or actually any veteran that's been to combat that has suffered trauma. They take that very hard. When they come to us, they know that we're not going to judge them, we're not going to put them down. We're here to support them and to help them adjust to civilian life by learning how they have changed, how these experiences in combat has changed them, and then teach them coping skills to integrate themselves back into society, civilian life.
Right. Well, my father was an alcoholic. He was an alcoholic before he went into World War II, and even worse when he came out. And my mother could not stand raising 3 young children in the family with what he was dealing with. She married my stepfather, and he had been a CB, Construction Battalion electrician in the South Pacific, but he saw all that horrific death and all that was going on, and he contracted malaria. So here's my question about this. Sometimes these veterans come back not only with emotional issues, but they come back with physical issues. Some come back having lost limbs, or my stepfather I would hear him screaming and yelling. He was having a nightmare. And night sweats from his malaria, and there was not much that we could do to help him. And don't you see this with some of the veterans you have? They have not only the emotional problem, but they have the physical problems.
And every different war has different medical issues or something that they were exposed to. For example, Vietnam veterans were exposed to Agent Orange,
Right.
which now has resulted in cases of cancer, diabetes, and other medical issues. There's a Persian Gulf syndrome, veterans that were in that era
Right.
also experienced some medical problems. And then we're starting to see the same with Iraq and Afghanistan vets who were exposed to many different chemicals and environmental. That's affecting their health, and of course their mental health as well.
I have a brother-in-law, had a brother-in-law who died from Agent Orange, but it took many years for him to die from it, from all the consequences of that. And my wife went up to Minnesota and helped the family to work through some of the paperwork and finding all the information they needed to get listed that way. Do you help in that aspect also to get people qualified to receive benefits from these things?
We do. We also refer them to our benefits counselors, either at the VA or service officers of the different veterans organizations. We do.
Tell me some of the highlights of your counseling work. You don't have to name names, but tell me some of your highlights when you saw a breakthrough with someone you were working with.
I guess one of the highlights that I like to talk about and that I'm always become very aware of is in group therapy. When some veterans, would say, oh, I could never do groups, then they finally decide to join a group and they find themselves relaxed, able to open up and talk to group members because they're, with their brothers and sisters they serve with, and they feel comfortable. And that's when I see breakthroughs and I see people becoming more confident and more open to talk and maybe even socialize a little bit more with their own veterans right there in groups. So those are one of the breakthroughs that I see more often.
Okay, what about it?
I like what you said, Jackie. That's very true. I had one that was reluctant, but he said, okay, I'll try it. I said, that's fine, try it. If you don't like it, then we can go back to individual. He went for the first time this past week and found himself having so much in common with the other guys that he was willing to open up. I also saw it in an individual who was heavily medicated, could hardly walk because of so much medications. And by working with this person on individual basis, week after week, with cognitive therapy, this person was finally able to say, wow, I understand. Between what we were doing at the vet center and the medications provider, they were able to cut down her medication because this person was doing the work that we were talking about and getting better.
Okay.
She was healing.
Now, in recent years, I've had some people call me and want to be on the show to talk about their issues. One of them was a woman that wanted to talk about spice, a drug in the Navy. Her son had been in the Navy and died from an overdose of spice, and she'd never heard of it. So she was alerting people in the community to be aware of what's happening. And then another one, she wanted to be on and talk about post-traumatic stress syndrome that made it dangerous to live with her husband because of things he would do to her or threaten her and things like that. He did not act the way he did before he went into service. Tell us about this. Do you work with family members if they raise issues and tell you something about some of these? Let's start with you, Eileen.
Yes, we see couples, and I have a group of spouses that come twice a month, and through this group, and some of them do individual work, they learn that their husbands have these symptoms because of what they had to do during war. And so then they're able to understand them, and they're able to help them cope and have grounding skills to where reminding them that they are not there anymore. They're here with their families and they're safe.
Oh, good. Your experience with this?
I think a big part of what we do at the vet center is education. So many times wives are invited into sessions, individual sessions, and they ask questions about their spouse's behavior, such as anger, anxiety, the nightmares, and they ask what can they do to help the veteran. And so we teach them about PTSD, how combat and trauma affects the brain, and how to help them cope, work as a team, improve their relationship. Now, sometimes marital issues come up. And so we address those, but we also have a licensed marriage and counselor at our vet center, and she focuses on family issues. So we also provide that service.
Does that involve family therapy? The children come and get in those discussions too?
Yes. The children are also involved as young as babies, adult size. And again, they learn to understand the veteran, what they're going through and why they have certain behaviors. And along, they also learn to cope with it. And many times they find closure. They find that in a family session, they become closer because they finally understand, what their dad has been going through, what their partner has been going through.
I want to, at this point, give you a chance to put up a telephone number or maybe even a website or something for those that are watching maybe and they think, I need help, and they reach out to you. You want to give a number?
Yes, our vet center is 915-772-0013.
Okay.
And our website is www.va.gov, and you just do a search for vet center.
Okay. Now, if I want to get more information, let's say me as a professor, a retired professor, and I want to know more, can I get printed resources or video resources somehow? Can I go on the internet and see some videos that explain your work and the work of your organization?
Yes, on the same website, www.va.gov, there's a lot of information about everything we've talked about. There's articles about readjusting back to civilian life. There's articles about the Gulf War illnesses, the Agent Orange. There's many articles. There's even, I believe, a booklet about managing your stress. So there's many articles there.
And the website offers information for families, for mental health professionals. They show videos with example of the treatments that they provide at the VAs. So it's a very informational website. They also provide handouts, both in English and in Spanish. So you can, for families to learn more about PTSD and other conditions.
In recent years, before I retired, and students were coming back, I had some that went to the war and then came back and took more classes later. I remember one first name, Ryan was his name, and he left before he left, he asked me if I'd pray for him because he was going to combat in Iraq.
Wow.
And I've had a few that went after they came back from service that would do something like this, really meaningful to me, would come up to me and say, Mr. Blevins, I was in Iraq or Afghanistan, they'd tell me where, and say something like this, I have a medallion I want to give to you. I'd say, a medallion? Yeah, a service medallion. I love your teaching, I love your class, and you're so understanding of some of the things that we've gone through. And many of them will tell me they were coming back from war. And then they'd give me a service medallion of their group that they were with, Ironsides or something. And I treasure those. They're in a little container at home all together. And I think about, and I say, look, you sacrifice more than I'll ever sacrifice for this country. I'm a teacher, a professor, try to help people understand things, inform people. But I never put my life on the line. And some of them were bothered by the killing they had been involved in. I never had to face anything like that. And so you're trying to help them get through those kinds of issues. Do sometimes little tokens like that mean a lot to them?
Yes.
It's an honor. It's an honor to receive one of those tokens. They're not just given out freely. They're not just, handed out.
Right.
They're specifically because they're honoring what they have learned from you.
Yeah. And some of them might say, no, you can't give me that. No, Blevins, it's yours. I want to share a little bit with you. And so I think that made them feel good that they could say, look, I worked for that, earned that, but here's somebody else I want to share it with. And that's what good life is really all about. What can we do for others?
See, and the reason that's so special is because that person trusts you and feels comfortable with you. And a lot of vets, when they come back, that's one of the biggest adjusting issues is trusting other people. So he trusted enough to open up to you and felt, that you deserve that.
Now, several of them would tell me, I may be having flashbacks during a class, and if I get up and leave, it's not because I'm mad at you or upset with you, but I just can't deal with the classroom at that moment. You have to deal with that, right? Some of them say, I just can't sit here right now and go through this talking, but I'll come back on another occasion.
And we have many veterans that are in school right now, and that's exactly what we tell them. We tell them, if you get anxious, talk to your professor before. Tell them if you need to get up or stand against the wall to feel more comfortable, then, do it. Mm-hmm. We tell them don't get the anxiety. Don't let the anxiety get the best of you to where you stop going to school. Mm-hmm. Find ways to adjust and continue your education.
I just gave you a gift a while ago, a miniature security blanket.
Yes.
In 1985, students that I had were all stressed out about finals coming up. And so I was thinking, and we just had on the news about a sailor in Lebanon that was killed on an airplane and thrown out on the tarmac, and then the plane was blown up in Beirut, Lebanon, on the airport. And so my students were all stressed out, and I was talking to a friend, I missed my security blanket when I was a child, dragging it around and everything. I had an idea, 1985. And so I invented the miniature security blanket. Mm-hmm. And I started handing them out to the people in my classes. And I came up with the idea of blue for the guys, pink for the women. And a situation developed, and I first did a brown one for a Hispanic student. Said, I'm all stressed out, I need a different color. So I gave him a brown one. Okay. My wife said, no, you don't do those with your students. So she suggested, my wife Shanna said, why don't you use gold? So I started doing that, handing them out, pink to the women, blue to the guys, and gold to people that don't know what they are, or have stress I don't understand. And so all these years I've been handing these out, and then I gave you a maroon one for when I'm traveling around the country. It's generic, anybody, male, female, or whatever. And people can have them in their hand, in their pocket, and be rubbing them, stressed out, and nobody will know that they're rubbing that. It's a worry stone that's soft. And so you now have those in your possession. And when you're working if you want me to run off some, I've run off some for community college functions and UTEP functions with their own colors. We could provide you some of those for whatever color you would suggest. I don't have any fatigue green or anything, or fatigue brown pieces of felt cloth, but I've had fun. How do you deal with stress when it comes to you dealing with these issues?
Well, I have a very good support system. I have my family, very close to my parents. I have my significant other. I personally love to travel, do little weekend getaways. Okay. Just be at home, relax. But I guess traveling is my best release for stress.
What about you, Eileen?
Oh, I love hot tubs.
Hot tub, okay.
Hot tubs. Pets give me a lot of comfort too. I have pets, and I work with training them and trying to make them sociable. And I also love to travel.
Now I've done some previous shows on horse therapy and dog therapy, pet therapy. You have some military personnel coming back, and they come back with a dog.
Yes, service dog.
Or their dog is eventually sent to them, and they're reunited, and that's their therapy. And now there are issues about therapy dogs on planes and all that. Some people faking it when they don't really have a problem, but they want to get their dog inside the plane with them. How many of these do you see at any given time in group therapy that they have their dog with them?
Daily.
How many?
Daily.
Daily?
Okay. Daily. We either they go to group or we have them for individual counseling. But I would say at least daily we see one veteran with their service dog.
And that dog is like a member of the family. And that's their therapy.
They provide a service to that veteran, whether it's grounding them or helping them with their anxiety, or they have to provide a service for them to have that kind of a dog. Because you also have the emotional dog that is, just for comfort. But a service dog has to provide at least 3 types of services to that veteran.
Okay, what?
To that person.
3 types of services.
It could be opening a door. Maybe that person has some kind of limitations that they can't open doors, so the dog is taught to open the door. pick up things for that veteran, or help them get up if they have issues with their back that they can't stand up.
And to alert them to danger.
To alert them to danger,
Right.
yes.
There's no doubt about that. Just
yeah,
mobility.
Yes.
The dogs can help
Yes.
them with their mobility.
Yeah, and I'd like to just add something here that we haven't touched on, if I may.
Okay.
You know, we've been talking about combat veterans, but we also have veterans that come back with different trauma, and that trauma is military sexual trauma.
Yes.
And it happens to men, it happens to women.
Right.
And we also see veterans for that kind of trauma as well.
I had a work study student about 30 years ago. I taught at community for 44. And she joined the Army. She was from a poor family here, had a couple of daughters, and she went into service. But she didn't stay very long because of sexual harassment. That's what some of the men wanted from her, was sex, not service in the combat and things of that nature. And so that's one of the issues that they have to deal with, and it's becoming more. There's a Me Too movement now saying we're not going to take this anymore. And there are new military regulations and regulations in Congress saying be professional and don't be predatory.
Right.
So you have to deal with some of those kind of issues and emotional issues. Well, last words. We have a couple of minutes. Last word, Jackie?
I'd like to give credit to our office staff, our office manager, our other two
yes.
clinicians. They all work very hard. They also have a knowledge. They're very good at resources. You can call us and we can refer you to different agencies that assist veterans. And right now, we're kind of short-staffed, so we're doing the best we can. But
Well, good for
we
you.
are
Eileen, last word.
dedicated.
Well, Jackie and I are both bilingual, so we also have bilingual clients. We have clients that don't speak English, so we do some of the counseling in Spanish as well.
I want to thank you for being
Well,
great
thank you
Americans.
for inviting
are,
us.
You are doing a service to our nation. There's no doubt about that.
Thank you for having
In
us.
service to the people who serve this country.
Thank you.
Wow, this is an emotional program, folks, and I'm glad that you tuned in and watched it. And be praying for the vets and their families at this time of need. I'm Leon Blevins.